Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A very intriguing matchup, week 2, as the SMU Mustangs head on the road to play the Oklahoma Sooners. And it is no secret how high I am on what Brent Venables did in the offseason, adding guys in the transfer portal, and what the jump is you're going to see year 2 for Oklahoma. But they're going to have a really interesting test that if I'm an Oklahoma fan, I'm really excited about finding out what this team is, because this SMU team is going to run fast. They got some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball through the transfer portal. This is going to be a really fun game. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're going to get a good sense of what this Sooners team is looking like in 2023. Now, before we get into kind of breaking down some of these key matchups, again, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support that you guys have shown the boys all offseason, especially the Oklahoma fans. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, the best part about doing these is hearing from you guys, learning from you guys in the comment section. So give me your top takeaways from that Arkansas State game, or what you're most excited for to see in this SMU game. Let's chop it up there. And now let's get into this preview. And I want to start with this Oklahoma offense. And before we touch on the personnel that stepped up, which it's a laundry list, and you take a look at my note sheet, trying to kind of evaluate all of the guys they cycled in, Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables put your boy through a lot of work, because there were a lot of guys playing and a lot of guys kind of catching my eyeball. I want to start with the overall evaluation and flow of this Oklahoma offense. Nearly perfect. You have the personnel to dominate Arkansas State. That's no secret. But to see Oklahoma come out, Dylan Gabriel, on time, accurate with his passes, a lot of space for these wide receivers to work with, establishing the run at a high level. Oklahoma's going to run fast, and you saw them in command of that tempo, just marching the football up and down the field. That was most impressive for me, is just how in tune and in tempo and kind of in touch this Oklahoma offense was. Really, really clean performance. Now, I want to get into the personnel that was stepping up, and I want to start with the wide receiver room. This was a unit that we kind of talked all offseason about in terms of who is going to step up. You lose guys like Theo Weiss, Marvin Mims, Braden Willis. There was a lot of opportunity for some young guys to step up and be playmakers for this Oklahoma offense. And that is exactly how it played out against Arkansas State on Saturday. You had a ton of guys kind of making plays. And I want to start with some dudes that we didn't totally talk about during the offseason. A lot of our attention went to Jaleel Farouk, Andrew Anthony. And yeah, Andrew Anthony looks solid, but shout out Jaden Gibson. Shout out Nick Anderson. I mean, Gavin Freeman looked really good. Some guys that weren't necessarily at the top of my list in terms of guys that are going to step up, we're kind of making plays. So if you're an Oklahoma fan, evaluating that pass catcher group, you're feeling really good about just the depth that you have in that wide receiver room. And at a certain point, it's going to be a numbers game. And you get into Big 12 play, some of these guys are going to step up. We just don't necessarily know who. But as of right now, you're feeling really good about the amount of capable bodies, more than capable bodies, in terms of making plays downfield for Dylan Gabriel and this Oklahoma passing attack. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, depth at the running back room. I mean, you have 4 running backs that are extremely capable. Javante Barnes, obviously my favorite running back in the Sooners offense, but Tawi Walker, I mean, he's a guy that just brings a different element to this Oklahoma rushing attack in terms of the physicality that he plays with. Javante Barnes, definitely the best, I think, all-around running back. I think a lot of Oklahoma fans that I've talked to agree with that, but you can't really ignore the element that Tawi Walker brings in terms of running behind his pads. He's the guy that defenses do not want to tackle 10-plus times a game. You talk about depth. You talk about how many snaps Oklahoma wants to run a game. Having 4 running backs that you can cycle in and out and keep fresh all game is going to be massive for Oklahoma, especially when games are tight in the second half, to have fresh running backs compared to a defense that is probably going to be pretty gassed. And you look at this matchup against SMU, SMU runs with a lot of pace. Oklahoma runs with a lot of pace. I would really look for, if this game is close in the second half, which it certainly could. SMU is a quality team. I would really look for Oklahoma to grind this SMU team down, because from a depth standpoint, SMU has some players, but Oklahoma has some players too, but they got a lot more of those players and a lot more depth. So when you talk about 98 degrees in Norman, 6 o'clock Saturday night, I feel like in the second half, the depth, the competitive depth for this Oklahoma team is going to kind of shine. One more thing, offensive line looked phenomenal. A lot of Dylan Gabriel had plenty of time, a lot of room for the running backs to operate. As an overall performance for this offense, it looked really, really good. Now, I want to flip to SMU's offense versus Oklahoma defense because this SMU offense, it's got some playmakers. They got two really good running backs in Jalen Knighton and LJ Johnson. They got some really talented wide receivers. Jordan Hudson, a guy that is certainly on my list. And I think Sooner fans probably remember from the recruiting trail. This is an offense that is way more capable than Arkansas State. And you're going to see Oklahoma's defense get a little bit more tested, especially on the perimeter. And this is an offense that wants to test your sideline and sideline speed. They're going to throw a lot of screens to the perimeter. They're going to run a lot of outside the tackle and kind of test the speed of the linebackers. I'm really excited to see how well Oklahoma can kind of utilize that depth, especially in the front seven, in terms of staying fresh. You start with this Oklahoma offense or defensive line loaded. And that's something we talked about a lot. When there's a lot of plays, you got to be able to cycle your guys up front in and out. You saw probably 10 to 15 defensive linemen that looked really, really solid for Oklahoma. Rondell Bothroyd, Ethan Downs. I thought some of the guys on the inside looked really, really solid. PJ Adebawore definitely flashed. Like he's got some growing to do in terms of development. He looks different from terms of like being an athlete. I think this front seven for Oklahoma and the amount of depth they have to stay fresh through 4 quarters against an SMU team that's going to want to challenge you with their tempo is going to be massive. And then you look at the back end. I mean, SMU is very balanced, threw for over 250 yards passing, over 200 yards rushing. This is a team that is balanced. They're going to attack you in a lot of different ways. I thought the secondary looked solid. I think it can get a little bit better. You saw the guys, I think, guys like Billy Bowman, Woody Washington, they were playing the football a little bit better in the air, but you're going to get a better sense of how good this secondary is going up against an SMU team that has a lot of talent on the outside. I want to get to the pick here. This is a game that there's going to be a lot of snaps. I probably lean to the over, if anything, but I want to give a side as well because both these teams are going to run fast. I think both these teams have some offensive playmakers that will be able to shine. That being said, Oklahoma sitting at 16.5-point favorites. I like Oklahoma. You saw two things that make you feel good about Oklahoma covering this number. One, that offense is going to score a lot of points. That is about as clean of an Oklahoma offense as we've seen in that Jeff Levy, Brent Venables era. They're going to get theirs. And then two, I mean, this team is going to have, you talk about third, fourth quarter when maybe Oklahoma has a 14, 21-point lead. They have guys that are on their 2 and 3 deep that and this is no disrespect to SMU, are probably better than SMU starters. So you talk about a team that I think is going to score a lot of points, but also play some really good defense in the second half. Give me the Sooners to cover 16.5. I want to see continued, I want to see just a lot of these players getting their work. This was a very impressive start to Oklahoma's season. I want to see a very similar clean performance against SMU. I want to see a lot of guys playing on the defensive side of the ball. I'm very excited about what you saw against Arkansas State and what you could see against SMU. We'll close it out there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate y'all. We'll talk to you guys later.